What's up? What's up? What's up? So Norm is West Coast wandering. He and I talked yesterday. I'll give everybody a couple of seconds to get in here. Hope everybody's doing well on this Monday morning. Monday before Super Tuesday on the Lord's Day 2024. Good morning, Luttrell. Good morning, Angry Dog. Who's over there on Rumble? Hey, BTL. Yo. In the cloud, good morning. So we're going to see how this goes. Norm and I talked yesterday afternoon. Well, it was afternoon for me. It was late morning for him. He's still in California doing the Adam Carolla comedy camp. And if, some of you were with us back in, I guess, late summer, October last year, he did the same thing in the debut camp there. He went out, and then we spoke about it last week that he was heading out that way, and he'd spend Thursday, Friday out that way, and he will be back tomorrow. He'll be traveling at some point tomorrow. So unsure of what the schedule will be for tomorrow, Tuesday. However, it was expected that he would be here this morning, but I imagine maybe his jet lag has finally worn off and East Coast time has left his body and he's fully getting a decent night's sleep. It's only 5 a.m. where he is. So we'll see. Maybe he'll call in. Maybe he'll pop into the chat. Maybe he won't. Either way, we'll spend a couple of minutes here. I felt a little bit guilty that we didn't have any content for you all on Thursday or Friday last week, even though, uh, Jackson, why would I be on fire? Just because I'm soloing it? I think I'd be okay, Anyway, so I think there's a lot to catch up on. Certainly, if Norm pops in here, he can talk about what he's been up to. The one thing that I sent to him yesterday and that we've advertised sort of as what we would talk about today is that there's some sort of rumor that the Supreme Court could actually rule on the Trump versus Anderson eligibility suit as soon as today. And I'll bring up what we have in the New York Sun here. I'm not sure what I think about this. I'm sort of optimistic about it. If you read the article from the New York Sun, it actually talks about the fact that most typically when these things happen, it means that that it's going to be perhaps a unanimous decision because it'll be sort of a one sentence per curiam, as it's called, opinion in which the Supreme Court as a unit just signs the order. I think that would deprive a lot of people who disagree with the opinion of the ability to be for any of the justices that would otherwise disagree or dissent from the opinion to disagree on the record or orally as they typically do. But we'll see. I mean, this is all sort of rumor mill stuff at this point. I think the USPTO, look at me, the Supreme Court's website did not explicitly say that they would be ruling on this one today, but there will be one today. So I guess around 10 a.m. Eastern, we'll keep our eyes to the sky there. Jackson says it looks like smoke was rising on your left. No, I'm just burning stuff. I'm not on fire. Other stuff is. So anyway, not sure if anybody wants to say too much about that. I think that I did speak a lot about this. So last week, I had an opportunity. I have a friend from law school, very good friend of mine. I met him in law school, and he and I are still very close to this day. He came out from LA to Charlotte and spent a year before transferring to an LA law school thereafter. So that kind of tells you the strength of mine and his friendship, that we didn't actually spend the full 3 years together, but he was in my wedding, et cetera, et cetera. And he has a consulting company that was given a contract to produce a new show for what's called for a platform that's called the Shade Room. So if you go on Instagram, I would suggest and just type in the Shade Room, you'll notice one thing in particular, and is that the Shade Room has 29 million followers on its platform, and it's clear that perhaps, I don't know, somewhere 80 to 90% of eligible Black voters are reached through the Shade Room's platforms and shows. And he invited me on to occupy a more conservative perspective on a new show and a new segment being debuted on that platform this week. The new show is called Read the Room, and the segment that we were recording for was called Room for Debate. And Room for Debate had three parts. I was given one part. The call of the question for me was, how do Trump's legal woes impact his campaign, if at all? The and everything went well. I don't want to bury the lead. It went well. Um, I think I performed far better than the more liberal proponent on the show. And I had an added level of comfort because the moderator is somebody that I know and trust. And for that reason, I was focused squarely on the merits of the question and trying to tease that out as effectively as possible without getting lost in all the boring details. However, what was clear is that the legal woes, as it were, as they were introduced, were simply five legal matters that, in one notable missing one, was this: the Trump v. Anderson case. And that was what I hung a lot of my time on. So we'll see what happens when that show goes live. Typically, Instagram divides things up into reels. That's just the way that people consume that content. Not sure how well it'll go. However, the feedback that I got was that some of the producers had to listen back a couple of times before they totally understood what I was saying, which is a criticism that I've gotten for most of my life. And that's not me tooting my own horn. That just means that perhaps I'm an idiot and it takes a while for people to understand what I'm saying. On the contrary, it could be because, I don't know, we show up here every day, Norm and me, and we take pride in trying to understand not only the substantive merits of every case, but the procedural posture thereof, and then zoom out to look at the picture in totality. I took the position on this recording that the legal matters Trump is dealing with were obviously politically motivated, right? So my position was that sub out the name Trump for anyone else. And this is not something that we as a society would want to see from our elected betters, prosecutors all over the country. Now, interestingly enough, my debate opponent, adversary, as it were, very nice young lady, is also running for district attorney in Jackson County, and which covers Kansas City, Missouri. And I think that the opinions that she had of Trump in particular, but also about America as a whole in retrospect, may be perhaps the most troubling of all for me. And I do recall within the recording, and whether this makes it to final cut or not will remain to be seen. But there was, and I'm paraphrasing, but not too much here, that America was never great in with respect to the Make America Great Again thing. And truly, I believe that when we speak here on this podcast about the bottom being gone or having fallen from pluralism, I could think of no better representation, illustration of that proposition than being on a newly produced segment of a show with two other very learned people, one of whom is running for position as chief prosecutor in a county in one of the biggest counties in the state of Missouri. And for that person to be of my relative age, maybe a few years older, having the opinion that America was never great. Stop and let that roll over you for a moment. But having said that, we get off of the recording and we're in the sort of the back room, as it were, of the virtual studio. And it was clear that I performed better than the other two from their vantage point. Not that the moderator was performing, but the feedback that I got was glowing. It was very positive. And I believe that if there were some sort of unification to be had from me appearing on a show, that is supposed to appeal to voters that do not necessarily overlap with the America First agenda or even the populist right, which can be debated. I think there's data from polling that I've seen that would show that perhaps the black vote is more in Trump's wheelhouse than it has ever been in any Republicans' wheelhouse heretofore, save, for example, when uh, blacks could not vote in elections, right? So Don says America was never perfect. America was never great. Mindset. What does great mean? I think that what pushes me back from that is not that, America's obviously great. I think that there's just coming from somebody that is Ivy League educated, has ascended into the profession of law and the practice thereof, um, and is ambitious enough to take on a system that is supposedly wrought with imperfections and is designed to create outcomes that are disproportionate for some people rather than others. And hearing those words come out so fluidly and so easily and without any it just means that there isn't pushback within the echo chambers in which she resides. And look, I don't have anything negative to say in general about her, but I think that if that's the campaign that she is running, it says a lot, right? We try to take a lot of cues from the campaign that Trump is running or that Biden is running. I think that if someone has an idea of who their voting base is or their demographic is, and they are obviously looking to um, raise their profile and raise their visibility, and they're using certain sound bites to do that, we can all understand why that might be. But if truly the red meat for a particular voting base is that America was never great, that's I find that to be hypocritical, right? On the front, but also, how is it that a practitioner of law is capable of swearing and upholding and keeping an oath, especially someone that's running for the position of prosecutor, right? There's just a lot philosophically there that I question, and loyalty there that I question, and motivation there that I question. Um, and I could be the outsider there, right? I'm willing to be that, but I don't know that you would ever hear me saying that America was never great. Don, I acknowledge, just like we have 150 million times on this platform, that uh, our history is wrought with imperfections, but it's history, right? And we can't rewrite it, and we also can't hide from it. And the more that we try to do both of those things, the more that we are destined to repeat the tragic events to which we make reference when we're saying those sorts of things. Anyway, let me go over here to Rumble, see who's talking. In the cloud, good morning. Sue's Day, good morning. It's me again. Let's see, what do we got here? How sad that people think America was never great. Anyone who doesn't think America was great. How was America not great in 1946? How great it is to be able to share the sentiment publicly and not face punishment from the government. That in itself makes our country great. Arguing about whether the USA was ever great is a rhetorical trap. And look, we didn't actually argue about that. Like, I'll give myself the credit that I think I deserve from that perspective. I was very disciplined and I stuck to the issues. You know, like we said, the ground was laid by saying that, there are 5 cases, right? The E. Jean Carroll stuff, the DC federal election stuff, the Georgia election stuff, the classified document stuff, the Judge and Gorin and civil fraud case from Letitia James in New York. Right, all 5 of those are just very quickly listed off. But you can even tell in me talking about it right now, how many people are you going to go on the street and say, "Hey, can you tell me just in 3 words what the cases are against Trump?" And that's the point that I think I'm making by saying that it's tough on these platforms to really even get at the issues. And what substitutes for substance are these sort of synthetic sort of one-liners, right? America was never great. Boom, that'll make the cut, right? Easy. TikTok it, reel it, put it on Facebook. And I'm much more long-winded in what I say. That doesn't mean that that it's better or that my ideas have more merit, But it is to say that, hey, number one, the only issue that really matters that's before us right now, and why I have this on the screen for you, is that if the AP is not even going to report on this being, because that's what we were referencing, is the AP has here's a map of this stuff, da 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 da. And in the Georgia section, the last update is in like October. They've mentioned nothing of the ethical probe of one Fannie Willis and Nathan Wade. They've mentioned nothing about that. So there's an entire demo of people, those who ostensibly will listen to this platform and others like it, who are being deprived of the nuances and the procedural ongoings of these cases in a major way. And then if I had not been the one that they had selected to represent more of what I call the conservative voice, because I am a registered independent, we wouldn't have even talked about eligibility and the decision by the Maine Secretary of State to take it into her own hands and remove Trump's name from the ballot, right? Or the fact that the Colorado Supreme Court took what, in Jackson, I credit you a lot with sort of this narrative pleading motif that you come to the streams with in the comments, to say, they're creating history through this narrative pleading, and using the courts as sort of that wedge to create history. That's the truth here. An NGO is what, created this sort of artificial narrative out of, fabricated from various different sources to fit something to say, hey, find that he's an insurrectionist. But I'm also, so at the same time as I'm hoping to use this platform as a mechanism by which other people could hear that, on the other side of the conversation, even within the conversation itself, there aren't people who appreciate the finer points of that and are able to pull it apart with me and to talk about it. And rather than us, and so then I get the feedback of, it took so and so 2 and 3 times to understand what you're saying. Well, hey man, that's all of our problem, isn't it? Because my proposition to everyone is that this isn't about it being Trump's campaign woes. It's about our woes as citizens. On the one hand, if one of these 6 cases succeeds and derails Trump's ability to be elected president, we have a very pressing and salient problem because of the fact that pluralism is gone and we live in a very polarized society. However, it's also my observation that if all of these political stunts, as they were, fail, right, that there's still going to be precedent created through the use of our judicial system to try and argue for the merits of these bullshit pleadings, right? But what that will do is empower future campaigners, future candidates for high office, to use this precedent to their respective advantages in how to chart certain behavior, and also say, well, Trump did X, Y, and Z, and that still didn't rise to the threshold level of take your pick, right? And that's where the good faith aspect of this podcast comes into play, right? The idea that we're all able to sit together and agree that all of these are just laws written on paper. I've heard Joe Rogan say it 1,000 times. It's just words on paper. And I could never really understood why that was so grating for me to hear. But I think it is because it requires something else, something more. And what we talk about here on the topic of moral authority and a collective belief that even if we disagree, that things will still continue on down a common vision of the good, or at least in the direction thereof, right? But what is occurring right now seems to me to be something quite different than that. And I'm not saying anything new or innovative, but it is still interesting to be on a show or even recording a show, and to know, even with the producers in the background and those that are, even from the operations perspective of certain things and trying to get the angles right and the lighting and that I'm the only one that really holds the positions that I hold. Or maybe I don't. I don't know. But what's clear is that there's only one side of this that can say things like America was never great and get away with it, and also take themselves seriously in a race, right? For political office, for head prosecutor, for district attorney of an entire county with one of the biggest cities in a state, right? Amazing, amazing stuff. Let's get it back to the chat here a little bit. Han says, Nikki won DC, always good when Swamp endorses you. Da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, Jackson, the courts are giving false authentication. Important word. Important word. T Girl says, great should be comparative. What country is better? Well, look, I mean, we don't have to think very hard about this either. Which, by the way, 45 of you here on Rumble, thank you for being here. I hope this is even mildly entertaining. I do feel a bit naked without without the talent here today. And even for those of you on YouTube, I appreciate very much you being here and sticking in. Thank you. Um, what I was saying about to T Girl's comment, what country is better? We don't even necessarily have to do that. I think that the proof is in the pudding, ultimately, right? There was a time in history when America became the the beacon of personal sovereignty, of innovation, military might, conquest, etc. I mean, the definition of great is not sort of a subjective how it makes you feel in that regard. It's great. It is a big force. It is magnanimous. Greatness is a process, and greatness is also observed on the whole. When Trump says, make America great again, make America big as hell, make the spirit of America, make this republic a shining beacon again. Make the rest of the world, T girl, want to look in the mirror to compare themselves. Not necessarily a side by side comparison, but what it's been taken as is some sort of callback to things that I'm not going to give airtime to, or to be ethnocentric, etc. Right? Any rationalization of MAGA has at its core that it's something that it is categorically not. And that's also what I ran into on the recording, is that in representing Trump as anything other than electable, right, was sort of a laughable thing. But my strategy there was to simply say, again, we as a country have a huge problem right now because of the existence of these cases. His campaign is essentially the amalgamation of these cases, right? The lawfare has become a core feature of his campaign, good, bad, or ugly. I think for good. And I think the data is behind me when I say that. Don says military conquest makes us great. Sometimes, sometimes not. Again, my definition of great is being very objective about that. Great is not a subjective feeling. I feel great. Okay, cool, right? Is Michael Jordan great? And what makes him great? Is McDonald's great? And what makes it great? It's about how it pervades human consciousness at scale. That is greatness. That is weightiness, right? America used to be an absolute thoroughbred, and perhaps we aren't what we were at one time right now. It's not to say that we can't get up off the couch, dust the crumbs off of our shirt and maybe, go for a run. But that's not the conversation we're having. State citizens have no peers in the jury pool of DC residents. I agree with that. Other than not letting your dog on camera, you're doing great. Where is Rose? She's taking a nap. Leave her alone. Leave her alone. Anyway, let's see. Naked Boyer, it's me again. Look, I knew that was going to set some of you off. Yeah, my bad on that. Han says even Mark Elias said Trump can't get a fair juror in DC. Again, I think my point, I don't disagree with that at all, right? And some of these trials aren't going to occur within any sort of, you know, in a time that will make it matter. And even if there are judgments and or verdicts in these trials, um, the appeals process will continue. But to me, the eligibility issue is the biggest hurdle. It always was. And if we get it today, that would be awesome. Pardon me. If we get a ruling on that in one way or another, that'll be awesome. Anyway. Okay, well, with that, disband the DC court system. The swamp judging the swamp doesn't work. T girl, there's not an agenda with LAL. Refreshingly honest. Yeah, I think that that sort of holds us back a little bit, T. And I mean, financially, obviously. But Norm and I do this, I think, to, and he and I, probably me more because, just because he's older and his kids are grown and out of the house and in careers and he's a grandfather however many times over. So he basically has to argue with his wife and that's about it. But I think, he and I each are pretty well misunderstood among our peers for the commitment to this show on a daily basis, the preparation and the thought that goes into it, and also the fact that we have not made the um, economics really sort of the thing that we care about the most. I think it's reps. We need reps, and whatever happens, happens, right? Norm closer to the grave. Yeah. I guess he's taking less of a risk. I don't know. I got into this because I wanted to sort of be some sort of support system to somebody saying things that made sense and needed to be heard. So that's really it for me. But to that end, I think that we've got ambition here. I know we've talked about the constitutional law classes, certainly are being diligent about keeping the newsletter coming out, and a lot of that has to do with Norm. Um, Janet, please say more if you will. Your peers misunderstand the world, and that's not me trying to debate you. I'd love to hear you say more on that. Jackson, if you and Norm would debate Article 2, your show would go viral. Vivek would come on. How do you know? Uh, Chris, good morning. Good morning to you. Christy, 5, good morning. Um, Jackson, I think the change of venue issue, we saw some of the change of venue issue attempted during the Proud Boys seditious conspiracy charges and trials, and we saw how that worked. So yeah, I mean, point made, obviously, but who among those who are anti-Trump would sit idly by if a successful motion for change of venue were to come to pass in the DC case? Yeah, right. Yeah, right. What else? And Janet, maybe we won't wait long enough to hear you say anything else. Um, in the cloud, talking more about America, people come here to seek the things that they can't achieve or the lives they don't have available to them in their country. I was also, I think it was Vivek, speaking of Vivek, that shared on his X this past weekend, at least on his X, maybe some other places, but he was playing tennis with a former top 200 tennis player in the world who was immigrated here, was a green card holder, and had been so for over a decade, was Ivy League educated, had started multiple successful businesses, you know, taught Vivek's children tennis, and the video was of Vivek and this guy playing tennis as well, and I forget his name, so if anybody has it, let me know. And that this guy still hasn't been able to get to to make his, transition into being an American citizen. He's still kinda stuck in limbo, and apparently there are many such cases, and I was thinking about that, um, just and I have from time to time with the issues that we're facing at the southern border and the seeming lack of imperative from our elected betters to do something meaningful about that, and meaningful meaning, within the expectations of the voting demographic, the voting people, those who have a stake here, who are staked here, citizens. And it just dawned on me that perhaps it's all, perhaps that's a less lucrative business than is, importing millions of people who have zero prospects, except those that you kind of force on top of them. I don't know. Maybe that's really dumb and short-sighted, but immigration issue is one that will definitely be, and I hope Vivek is a part of Trump's cabinet. I desperately do. I really, 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 really do. Janet says, "Your peers eschew the masses and their wisdom to their own peril." And I don't, yeah. It's still a bit vague, and again, not no offense there at all. Um, but I will take part of what you're saying there, eschew the masses and their wisdom. I think the wisdom is part of that, right? Tradition, maybe, um, as if there's no enduring traits that are there for our collective and positive historical memory of how we became great. I think I would agree with that. I think that my peers on mass lack a vision of themselves that they are comfortable with and proud of. And a lot of that has to do with um, a lot of that has to do with the vision that we were given by our elders coming from the school, coming through the public education system and the coercion toward higher education and the coercion toward intelligence and academic achievement for intelligence and academic achievement's sake, rather than for the sake of uh, being productive and being useful and finding a sense of self and an inner voice and um, becoming a member of a community. So give us some time, Janet. I think there are certain of us who have been busy trying to fight against the current and stabilize ourselves sufficient on the home front to be able to turn around and help those of us who are still sort of floundering. But that's the way I see it. So I don't think that you're wrong, but I do think that the opinions that we issue en masse are as shallow as they seem and can be changed, therefore. Vivek's buddy can't be a citizen, but illegal anchor babies can be POTUS. You're going to keep on Article 2. If you can guarantee me, Jackson, if Vivek would come on, we'll take up Article 2, but he's a hard man to reach. Anyway, thank you all for being here. Tomorrow we'll be back, and it may just be me again. Um, and if so, that's okay. I think you guys are okay with that. I'll prepare a few more articles. We'll talk more about what's going on. Hopefully, we'll have a decision in the Trump v. Anderson case by then. If not, I'll apologize for the headline and tell you that I'm a victim of the rumor mill and ask that you upend everything built on meritocracy and make it egalitarian so I don't feel bad about myself for making a mistake. And I expect that you will honor that. Anyway, see you all tomorrow. Thank you.